It's preparing.
And push record.
Oh, I think I did that already, but yeah, there we go.
There we go.
And now,
Okay, we're live.
Bill, would you hand back over host function to me?
I will do that.
All right, and we are live, and we are finally live. And my name is Jeff Reynolds. We're with the Oregon Republican Party tonight, and we were trying to have this event on YouTube Live at 7 p.m., but we were beset by technical difficulties because of course it's 2020, but we were also beset by an attack by the mainstream media. So our legacy alphabet media was attacking our host before we could even start this show. So I want to say thank you everybody, first of all, for your patience, but also thank you all for joining us. This is breaking news that's hitting today. This is all about the Bidens, and that's why we're being attacked. So hopefully this thing goes for the entire hour. Who knows if we're going to be allowed to finish this entire event, but we're joined tonight by a very special guest who was discovered, actually, not discovered, but has been in contact with our national committee man. And I'm going to let Solomon introduce our special guest, but before I do that, I want to let everybody know that I'm on here to kind of direct traffic and pull the levers behind the scene and maybe ask a few questions. But also we have Sonny Danforth, who's the finance chair for the Oregon Republican Party. We have David Darnell, who's a member of the Oregon Republican Party Executive Committee, along with myself, Jeff Reynolds, and Bill Courier is also on here, but he's going to stay silent. I think he's kind of blacked himself out and is just going to listen along. But this is huge breaking news, and it's being brought to you actually by the Republican Party of Oregon. So when you hear people say, what's the Oregon Republican Party been doing? Well, a lot of it has been Solomon Yu, and a lot of it has been Solomon's organization, Republicans Overseas, and Solomon having a particular interest in the Chinese Communist Party based on having immigrated and escaped from the Chinese communists many years ago and coming to settle in Oregon eventually and be a major player in the Oregon Republican Party and the Republican National Committee. This is why we do what we do. We are actually having an effect. We're breaking news, and we're going to hopefully expose how compromised the Biden family is to China. And this is a big deal, folks. This is more than just Hunter Biden's laptops. There's a research report out, and I'll let Solomon explain who our guest is and why we've brought him on and what kind of research he's done. Solomon, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you, Jeff, and good evening. My friend Christopher Balding is an Econ 101 professor and lived in Vietnam, lived in China. So he was an expat until he published latest research regarding a Chinese high-tech company doing research and gathering data on our military leaders and politicians and building family trees involve six countries: US, UK, Canada, Australia, Japan, and India. After he published that article and that research paper, and the Vietnamese government told him, you can't stay here anymore, and too many Chinese spies in Saigon. You better pick your kid and wife and leave. So early October, he left Vietnam and came back to California. Now, I know him as the expat because my relationship with Republicans Overseas, and worked with him. As a matter of fact, he is the one came to me, said during RNC meeting, okay, got a call from him, Solomon, 12,000 Chinese armed police ready to move into Hong Kong. There is a short list to arrest those pro-democracy leaders, and several of your friends on that list. So I of course, informed the White House. And next thing you know, President picked the phone, called Xi Jinping, and said, if you move Chinese armed police forces into Hong Kong, we don't have a trade deal. So President called Xi Jinping is a real story, okay? And the latest thing really is the fact Biden's both compromised, totally compromised. When President said, Joe Biden is president, China owns America, is based on Christopher Balding's research. What happened was he discovered after Bank of China gave Hunter Biden company, BHR, 1.5 billion with the B initially. Bank of China listed BHR as its subsidiary. So president is right, and Biden is president, US will become China's subsidiary. With that, I'm going to turn over the mic to my friend, Christopher Balding. Christopher, take over.
Thank you, Solomon, for that kind introduction. You know, just as a little bit of background on myself, you know, I consider myself a little bit of a libertarian style conservative in the sense of I'm hawkish on foreign policy types of issues, and I'm generally, you know, let's say free marketeer and free, you know, big L liberals socially. And so my, you know, having lived in China for 9 years and then Vietnam in 2 years, my real focus was on, you know, the foreign policy and what was going on in those areas. And this report really got started because I kept having journalists call me up and say, you know, what do you know about what's going on with the Bidens in China? And at the time, I knew, you know, what I had read in the papers and everything like that. But really nothing more. And so a couple of things happened. And so we started doing some research on that, and very complicated, but also I think very problematic picture emerged of what you saw happening. And if there's any questions from Sunny, Jeff, David, as we go, because this is kind of a very complicated picture, you know, feel free to jump in and ask, and I'll do the best that I can, because it is kind of a complicated scenario. So I think the first thing that is worthy of note is that, to kind of go chronologically here, is that the relationship that we're really talking about here, really Hunter Biden started going to China. The first trips that we picked up were shortly before Biden became vice president. In 2008, and there was a steady stream of visits to Beijing over time. I would say I'd have to look at the exact numbers, but I would say it was probably almost once a year to China during that time. And during that time, through between 2008 and 13, all of the trips that we could kind of get some idea as to what happened. He was meeting with individuals and institutions that would ultimately become the investors in the BHR fund, Bohai, Rosemont, Seneca. And so the first thing to note is that effectively this appears to significantly predate, the work on this appears to significantly predate 2013, going back to probably 2008 is when you could really see the groundwork being laid for this. I think another thing that is very important to note is that all of the individuals and institutions that are surrounding everything that's going on here, and there's a whole cast of characters. I mean, it's almost like a Coen Brothers film or something like that. A lot of these people have very interesting backgrounds and things like that. All of these people are very closely linked to the state. whether it is with quasi-state type of organizations, whether it is state-owned banks, whether it is part of the actual government of China, things like this. Everyone that you're seeing here is very closely linked to the state. And I think very importantly, all of the people that I won't say all, I would say a lot of people that you're seeing are also very closely tied, either working or members, things like that, of Chinese organizations that are known by the U.S. government and other governments to be intel and intelligence. They're cover institutions for intel and influence operations. And what I mean by that is China has a lot of very innocuous sounding institutional or organizational names. One of the ones that pops to mind is the Chinese Council for the Promotion of International Trade. And there's declassified CIA documents dating back to the 50s, basically saying that this organization, what they do is they compromise foreign businessmen to then force them to impact economic policy in their home country to head off things like economic sanctions and things like that. And again, this goes back to the 50s, so this is not brand new information. I mean, this is information that would have been widely available, on a simple Google search, all the way through to, U.S. government organizations and institutions. All of these people that were, I apologize, not all, I would say a large percentage of these individuals and institutions that are involved here are very clearly working with these organizations in one capacity or another. Another point that I think is very interesting is there appears to have been basically, let's say, two, I think, key individuals. One of them is who I will call the Godfather, and the other one is who I will call the broker. The Godfather is a gentleman by the name of Yang Jiechi, and he first met Joe Biden when he was the Chinese ambassador to the United States. If memory serves me correctly, it was 2001 to 2005. And there's lots of recorded meetings with them because Joe Biden at the time was the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And so he goes back to China, and I forget which position he holds from, I apologize on the exact dates, let's say 2005 to 2010. I forget his exact position. But beginning, I think, in 2011, and again, it's in the report, you can look it up. But from about 2011 to 2015, he is the Chinese Minister of Foreign Affairs. Okay. And the reason that is important is some of the institutions that were essentially working with Hunter, shepherding this process through to facilitate this investment corporation, this investment fund, was Ministry of Foreign Affairs institutions. Because what they do is they have like Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I forget the name off the top of my head. It has a lot of letters and it's an acronym. But it basically acts as a think tank and outreach type of organization and things like that. And again, known to the US government and other governments, it also acts as an intelligence and influence organization. And so there's a very clear link there. And there's one more reason that this particular individual matters, is that in China, even though in the United States, and in most governments that we're familiar with, the Minister of Foreign Affairs is the senior foreign policy leader of that country. In China, the Minister of Foreign Affairs is actually not the supreme leader of foreign affairs. In China, all things of the party are above the actual functionaries of the government. Okay, so this gentleman who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs in China from 2010-11 to 2015, he is now the Director of Foreign Affairs for the Chinese Communist Party. He is basically Chairman Xi's Director of Foreign Affairs. Okay, and he is one of the few Chinese individuals on the most powerful Politburo. So this is truly one of the most powerful men in all of China that knew Joe Biden then, oversaw this process, this investment fund formation while he was the Chinese Minister of Foreign Affairs, and subsequently moved on to become Xi's essential manager of all things United States and foreign policy. So that's why that individual is very important. The second individual that is very important here is a Taiwanese national by the name of Michael Lin. Michael Lin is a Taiwanese national, but we find a very scant record of him professionally before about 2005 or so. Supposedly, he was the director of international investment for a Chinese company called the Founders Group. The Founders Group is important because their current role, for instance, just without going into all the history about them, the Founders Group is important because they are a state-subsidized firm that is arguably the leader in China's push into semiconductors. They have a well-known record of intellectual property theft, other things like that. Okay, so this is the background that he comes out of. Now, what's notable about Michael Lin is that after he leaves the Founders Group, this Chinese company, which is a large conglomerate, after he leaves them, he sets up his own consulting and investment firm, and really we can't find any real record of anything of any real business going on there. There's not really any evidence of that. But for some reason, once he joins forces with Chris Hines, Devin Archer, and Hunter Biden, things seem to really improve for this guy. And so he kind of becomes, because he went to Yale with them, according to public records, he went to Yale with them with Chris Hines in the early 90s. And that's how they met each other. So in about 2005, Michael Lin starts his company. 2008, he links forces with Chris Hines and Hunter Biden, and they start down this road of developing some type of investment fund. So basically, all of the clients that he's ever listed are major Chinese SOEs and basically Chinese government entities in one form or another. Okay. And one of the links that we can't entirely figure out is he clearly has very close relationships to arguably some of the most senior people in all of China, and we can't entirely figure out where that link was made. I mean, there's clearly some places where it took place, but we're not entirely sure where that took place. The final note about Michael Lin, well, there's two final notes. I did actually reach out to some individuals that I know that work in these types of fields, and two different national intelligence agencies did confirm that he is a person that they are let's say interested in, that they are keeping an eye on. The last thing of note about Michael Lin is that he has actually gone missing in China. We believe that he is currently detained in China. Okay. This is what's been reported out of Taiwan is that he is currently detained in China. The web pages of his previous firm have been taken down. We were able to save all of those. So there's definitely a lot of threads to pull on there, though there remains a significant amount of unanswered questions. So what happened is that, and let me turn now to the financial issues, which will kind of lead us into some of the deals and some of the financial importance here of what's gone on. So one of the things is there's some of these widely reported numbers that I think deserve context for a non-financial audience. So the first thing that I think that is important is that Hunter's lawyer has said, for instance, that he and the American partners only contributed, I think, like $400,000 for their respective shares in the company. And so, President Trump says 1.5 billion. Hunter's lawyer says 400,000, and and people don't understand that those are actually two different. They're referring to two entirely different things. I mean, it's kind of like referring, to water as the ocean. Well, the ocean can be water, but water doesn't necessarily mean it's ocean. So let me explain what those two numbers are. The Chinese companies and the American partners both contributed money to the formation of the company. And when I say formation of the company, for a financial services firm, that is going to contribute to pay salaries, office space, buy some computers, all of this kind of good stuff. Okay, that's all that. So when Hunter says, well, I only contributed $400,000, he's actually entirely accurate. Okay, he's 100% accurate. Let's be fair about that. Okay, but what he's referring to is we're now going to use that money to rent an office for the year and hire a couple of people and buy some computers so we can go out and do what we do. Okay, the 1.5 billion number is inaccurate, but let's start with that. So what, as a financial services company, that they will then do is they will then go out and say, we have projects we want you as an investor to invest in. Okay, so that $1.5 billion is not a check to Hunter or somebody else in the firm. That $1.5 billion is to invest in a building, a plant, a highway, whatever it is. Okay, so the 1.5 billion number is also completely accurate in a way. Okay. Where the research has taken us is this. First of all, we believe, I think all evidence indicates that the actual number is significantly higher than 1.5 billion. And there's two specific reasons that we say this. Number one, Michael Lin actually says documentably that the amount of assets under management by the firm is 6.5 billion, not 1.5 billion, but 6.5 billion.
And that's under BHR, is that correct?
That's under BHR, yes, that's correct. Okay. So, and I should say, just so, again, for a non-financial audience, so it's clear what we're talking about here, firms like BHR, they make their money off of the amount of what we call assets under management. Okay. So let me give you what a typical fee structure is. And, to the best of my knowledge, nobody's been able to locate a specific fee structure, which, let's leave that aside. But the industry standard in China is what we call 2 and 20. So BHR as a firm will receive an annual management fee of whatever funds they have under management of 2% annually. Okay, so if they have $6.5 billion under management, that means that they receive an annual management fee from their clients of $130 million a year. Okay, that's the first aspect. Okay, the second aspect of this is firms like this, they make a what is called a 20% fee on the carry. Okay, and so let me explain that. So let's assume that BHR buys an asset in year one for $100 million. And let's assume that they sell it 5 years later for $200 million. Okay, so there's a $100 million gain. Okay, they would receive 20% of that 100 million. Okay, there's details that I don't think are super important at this moment. I'm using a simplified example, but BHR would receive a 20% fee on whatever profits that were realized. Okay, so let's take a simple example. Okay, let's take a very simple example. Let's assume that the 6.5 billion that Michael Lin has put in writing is an accurate number, and let's assume that China says, because President Biden has been elected, we're going to liquidate this firm and pay out the partners their respective shares. Okay, it is probably it's very, very difficult to say what the exact number would be, but it's probably a conservative estimate to say that Hunter Biden would receive upwards of $50 million for his share of BHR. Okay. Remember, this firm is generating $130 million a year in annual revenue, plus, let's assume conservatively, $300 million in capital gains. You know, what is his share? Okay, as a 10% owner. Okay, it's very, very difficult because we don't have access to their books. But I do think that that's a conservative estimate of a pretty conservative estimate of what he would receive as a payout. Okay, so that hopefully clarifies the finances. One other issue about the 6.5 billion, the individual that really drove this research tried to reconstruct all the deals that had been done, and basically, because a lot of this financial information is simply private, it could not be reconstructed to 6.5 billion simply because a lot of that information is private. But we feel very, very confident, even independent of Michael Lynn, saying that the number is well in excess of 1.5 billion. And I'll give you a couple of very simple reasons. There were two, so they've done a lot of different deals in different parts of the world all over China. If we take just two deals out of all of the deals that they've done, two deals alone add up to 1.6 billion. Okay,
Wow.
of projects that they managed. Okay, so again, even if we don't believe Michael Lynn, we can definitely say with zero hesitation, it's well in excess of $1.5 billion. Okay, so again, I want to be as factually accurate and conservative, sure, not politically, but conservative in what I'm saying about what we can verify with the data. And I think another thing that is there's a couple of other things in these financial arrangements that are very important. All of the investors, almost all of the projects that we see are effectively state projects or state-owned companies, very close to the government, things like that. Okay, there is nothing remotely independent or private about this. Okay, just to give you like one example, true thing here. Chinese Social Security is an investor in the Hunter Biden firm. Okay, I mean, think about that. Chinese Social Security. I mean, this
wow.
is.
Now, I have a question, Christopher.
Yes.
I want to interrupt you just a minute. I do have a question. I know nothing about business in China,
Yeah.
but there are private businesses. We have plenty of companies in America that are private businesses doing business in China that are not necessarily all in this type of bed like BHR is, with in close proximity, funded by the Chinese banks as well, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Hold on one second. I just have to hit it because of the NBC thing. I have to.
Yeah, no problem. So yes, Christopher's getting a hit with NBC. They're trying to smear his report.
Yep. The second it came out, they were all over it, weren't they? They're like a swarm of locusts.
And so it broke on redstate.com. And so there's more avenues of going to look at this information. But it is fascinating that now to hear the Social Security of China is invested with BHR. Go ahead, Christopher.
Yes. So I mean, this would be like U.S. Social Security or something like that. It's the same type of. So like there's local governments that are invested. There's a local government. It's about an hour or 2 hours from Beijing in Northeast China that is directly invested in this. And I think what was very interesting to me is that it came out, and you can see this in financial filings on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, that BHR is actually a subsidiary of the Bank of China. I mean, it's a literal subsidiary of the Bank of China.
That's unbelievable.
Wow.
I don't have the words for that.
Wow.
That's why President said, Biden is president and China owns America.
Well,
And he's right.
It shows how compromised, frankly, the Biden family is. If that's that case.
Yeah, and so if you look at the assortment of investors, both directly into, you remember how we talked about there's the company and then there's their projects. So if we look at who the investors are into the firm and who the investors are into the project, it's basically a who's who of Chinese state and direct state, meaning the government or some effective type government institution, and state-owned banks is basically who it is, are the investors both in the firm and in the projects that they are doing. So I think that was another fact that just once you started to peel back this, and again, one of the things I try to emphasize to people about this research is first of all, and this is the issue with like the NBC thing is like, look, I'm not connected to the White House. I don't work for the campaign. I've had no dealings with the campaign. Okay. I'm not a political operative. Okay. Of any kind. Okay. I don't watch TV news of any kind. Okay. One of the few skills that I have in life is, combing through Chinese financial reports and corporate data and stuff like that. Okay. I mean, that's what I do.
That's a special person who can do that, Christopher.
Hey, along those lines, we actually have a couple of questions on the YouTube channel right now.
Yeah.
I'd like to address because they're kind of germane to what you're talking about. Bobby R has asked a couple of questions. Has anyone checked for overseas accounts? Are there detailed paper trails? And I know a lot of this information is in that 63-page report, but how can you address those two issues?
So we don't, because this was, an open source research report. I don't have access to the bank accounts and things like that. What I would emphasize is that even though I have no access to anything on the laptop or anything like that, I've not been in contact with any of those people. Everything that has come out that I've seen in the news about the laptop basically confirms and is closely corroborating, and like two puzzle pieces coming together, what is in this report. And the reason I mention that is I don't have any evidence, to be honest, of, that Hunter had a bank account in Hong Kong or in China or elsewhere. Some of the shell companies that they used for some of these things were definitely in different parts of the world. I don't personally have any information that Hunter had any overseas bank accounts.
I might add something regarding NBC hit piece on Christopher Balding. And one of the angle really got them going, NBC, is a national security angle. And Hunter Biden's business, BHR, actually jointly with a Chinese military company bought out a U.S. Ohio high technology company producing anti-vibration engine and for a nuclear submarine, as well as for our fighter F-35 jets. Red State break that news. And because now we can pinpoint Biden's actually not only getting paid, but they actively transfer our technology and to Chinese military. And now today, and the Chinese PLA stands for People's Liberation Army, can produce J-11 and that equivalent to our F-35. So this is really scary stuff.
So let me tell you, one of the things here is the way a lot of Chinese, especially state companies operate is they're like giant umbrellas / Russian nesting dolls. They will literally just have, thousands of companies down the pyramid. And so one of the things is, and we do not specifically cover this specific deal because a lot of the documentation on it was simply private, because it was a private company. We didn't have access to the documentation, and we didn't have access to the laptop. But the specific company that they partnered with in this deal is a company called AVIC, Aviation Industry of China, or something like that. Again, I forget the exact acronym. But what's notable about AVIC is that this is a major PLA aerospace type of contractor, and they do all kinds of nasty things, to be blunt. Okay, they have been on the entity list or had sanctions against them many times over the years, and so one of the issues is and we say this in the report. We don't know from our report what Joe Biden did or didn't know. Okay, as a matter of judgment, it clearly would have been available information, even in 2014 and whenever they were doing this deal. It would have been available to anyone with a simple Google search that AVIC, the company AVIC, was a PLA military contractor and had been sanctioned many times. And so at the best thing that you can say is that it constitutes a serious, enormous, mind-numbing lack of judgment by Hunter Biden. And based upon what I've been told by different people in the government and different governments, there would be absolutely no way that Joe Biden wouldn't have known, because there would be, receiving Secret Service protection, there would be reports filed that would be circulated at senior levels into, definitely a family member, that, hey, he traveled on these days to this place, met with these people, things like that. So maybe Joe Biden's staff hid them from him. I can't comment one way or the other. I don't know what Joe Biden did or didn't know. There absolutely would have been significant documentation internally that this was taking place and that AVIC was a known security risk.
And then, so I'm looking also at at 2012, his first China deal there. And purchasing, and I'm sorry, I'm going to slaughter the name. It starts with a W.
What's the
Wang Zhang.
Oh, okay.
And in 2013, that A123 systems.
Yes, there were a lot of those were some, especially early, those were some very sketchy details that we simply don't have a lot of documentation for, because the types of deals that we have the best documentation for are ones that are related to public companies, because they will have filings of, that list dollar amounts, deal structures, things like that. So that specific one, there's definitely, one of the things is, this is probably a 60-page report. If you chased every thread and had a team of researchers, you could probably turn it into 500 pages, because there's so many different threads to what's going on here.
It looks like a very tangled web, that's for sure.
Yeah, it is a very tangled web. There's definitely evidence that specific deal is problematic, and because it involved Delaware company and batteries and things like that, we definitely need more documentation to know exactly what happened there.
Hey, Christopher, we have another question on YouTube, if you don't mind. There was a question about other politicians. Do you know of any other U.S. politicians who are involved in this, or is this specifically, or your research, did you focus just on the Biden family?
So we definitely focused specifically on the Bidens. But there definitely was a couple of interesting threads that came out of this. The primary one is related to, the real one that we can comment on authoritatively is related to John Kerry. John Kerry, of course, was the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee until he accepted an appointment to become Secretary of State. He's married to Teresa Hines, and his stepson is Chris Hines. Chris Hines, if you remember me circling back to it, was the first contact with Michael Lynn when they attended Yale in the early 90s. the reason all of this matters, to tie together this this family web here, is that so when Chris Hines and Hunter Biden were partners in numerous business deals, and the Chris Hines companies always had Rosemont at the beginning. Rosemont, you know, something, Rosemont Management, Rosemont Consultants, Rosemont, you know, fill in the blank.
Not Rosebud, Rosemont.
Yes, Rosemont. And Hunter Biden's firms always initially had Seneca something, and so they would partner together on multiple deals. The deal in particular that definitely raises eyebrows is Rosemont had a company called Rosemont Realty. And it was, I forget the exact date, it's in the report, but I believe it was at the early stages of when John Kerry was Secretary of State, maybe in his latter stages when he was still chairing the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I forget. And it's believed, you know, we don't have the exact corporate records because those are secret in Delaware, so you don't know who the shareholders are. But a Rosemont Realty, which was, you know, acknowledged by everyone to be heavily involved with the Heinz Kerry money, was sold to a listed Chinese company. It was listed in Hong Kong, and they were at one point owned by a Chinese shipping company, which was again a known entity list company. And and at the time they had actually divested their stake to another Chinese company, Chinese Re, which is short for Chinese Reinsurance Company, which is, you know, like the entire, you know, the biggest Chinese reinsurance company in all of China. And so that was sold to, Chris Hines was selling Rosemont Realty to this Chinese firm listed in Hong Kong, while his stepfather was either the Senate Foreign Relations Committee chair or the Secretary of State. I forget the exact timeline. Now, the reason that this is interesting is John Kerry holds significant amounts of assets in Heinz Kerry family trusts, because both he and Teresa Heinz are rather wealthy individuals. They hold a fair amount of assets in trusts. And so on the financial disclosure report, it simply states that he holds, you know, assets in these trusts. Now, what had always been stated by, you know, all parties concerned is that they basically ceded the Heinz Kerry family would cede Chris Hines business ventures in different areas. Okay, so the reason this matters is we don't know this for a fact. I want to emphasize, we do not know this for a fact. Okay, but there is strong reason to believe, based upon, you know, the blind trust that John Kerry, or the trust that John Kerry had with Teresa Heinz, that were investing in Chris Heinz's firms, that John Kerry was directly or indirectly invested in a real estate company that was sold to the Chinese while he was either a senator or Secretary of State.
Wow.
Jeff, I might add something to what Christopher is talking about. As a matter of fact, it was very interesting to know Hunter Biden gave several Democrat U.S. senators name, phone number, contact information as references to Chinese state-owned enterprises and to do deal. Now, Washington, D.C. works this way. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. So before Hunter can give their names out and phone number and email contact information, wherever, and he had to go over to those senators, to including Harris, okay? And
yeah, that's actually a question on YouTube. Somebody mentioned that Kamala Harris has been rumored to be involved in the Biden finances. And so is there an actual connection there?
There is a connection, the kind of connection our reporters are still investigating based on my understanding how DC works. When you ask a senator let you use the name and the phone number and email as your reference, and the senator will say what's in for me. So knowing the kind of shady deal they put together, what's in for you, I might be able to get some money for your super PAC.
So
that's what
I should say in our report, because for many reasons, I want to keep it as direct. This is what we have documentation. We never came across Kamala Harris's name. That was not a name that ever appeared in any of the documentation that we ran across. So from what we can say, we have no evidence of that. I'm not saying that other evidence doesn't exist elsewhere. In our evidence, we don't have any evidence to say that.
One of the things that I found very interesting in this, because it is a very tangled web, this report, in looking at it, is how many deals are done, monies have exchanged hands, but the deal actually falls through.
So
very good point.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult to say. I mean, that's an excellent question. The deals that, so like one of the things is and this is why we tried to focus on this is what can be documented. So the places where we can document are, there was a company opened up on this date in this province of China, and it appears to hold XYZ asset, or there was this mention in a Chinese financial report of things like that. So deals that are not consummated are, at least for the typical research methods that were used here, are not things that generally appear. That doesn't mean, that consulting fees or other things like that might not change hands, but we were absolutely focused on, this is something that can be documented, to show, and there really shouldn't be any debate about its accuracy or legitimacy.
Well, like that potash deal.
Yeah.
That's a deal that it didn't materialize, but there was a lot of money that changed hands.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. And so, if there's a pattern there, it's one of the things that I think would definitely be worth investigating. Remember how I said that there's all these threads that you could follow up on? I personally can't, say with any degree of certainty that is, but I think that would definitely be something that would be a thread worth following.
So that's a good question. Then, what's next? What are you researching now, and what are you hoping to find?
The next bottle of bourbon that I'm going to take a sip from, to be honest. But the last thing that I think I would like to tell your listeners about is a lot of these deals that took place that we have documentation for are completely bogus. I mean, they're basically, there is no purpose other than to funnel revenue and assets into this firm. Okay, and I'll give you two examples of this. So Hunter's firm partners with a major Chinese SOE copper mining firm to do a deal in the Congo. And the deal, and again, this is finance stuff, so it's going to be a little complicated, so I apologize. So if there's questions, ask me, okay? So first of all, the copper mining firm and Hunter's firm are going to take a combined 80%. In the copper mine. The copper mining firm is going to take 56%, and Hunter's firm is going to take 24%. And the amount that each party is going to spend is agreed upon, okay, for their stakes in the firm. Okay. Here's where it gets crazy. The copper mining firm guarantees the loans, guarantees the assets that Hunter has to raise and the loans that firm has to take out. And they even agree to put their own assets at risk. Okay. So it's kind of like, one of you guys putting your house at risk so I can go gamble in Vegas. Okay.
Yes.
I mean,
that's the poor deal.
It's a crazy setup. Okay. The other thing that's part of it here is each party engaged in a deal that's called a joint put call deal. And so basically they say, in 2 years, you have the right to say you're going to buy my share of the company at this price guaranteed in 2 years. Okay. And so Hunter's firm had the option to what's called put, sell their stake at, predefined price, which of course was profitable to BHR. And the copper mining firm had a joint, what's called a call, meaning in 2 years, they could say, you have to sell your stake to me at this price. Okay. So basically what it meant was it was free money. There was no other purpose for it. The copper mining company is putting their assets at risk so that hunters can go out and borrow this money. They then guarantee the price at 2 years that is going to be received. So basically, it's nothing but free money to BHR. There's no purpose for BHR in this transaction.
Right. In 2 years, they're getting the free money.
And in 2 years, they're getting the free money. That's exactly.
But then to read that goes beyond that. That mine ended up failed.
Yes, that mine ended up failed. So, and so that's one of the key things here is that there was not, and so in all of these things that we see, there is not economic rationale for this transaction. The only rationale is to funnel assets and revenue to a politically favored firm.
Yes.
But there is a national security rationale. Today, Red State just published this headline. If you guys Google it and search for "Are Hunter Biden's China trips with Michael Lin?"
And Solomon, I actually put that in the comments on YouTube, so it's there for the audience to look up.
Good. So you can see national security. We lost.
We'll say it anyway, Solomon.
CIA assets.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's absolutely national security assets that are at play here. There's clearly corruption at play here. It's a deeply problematic story that emerges from looking at, again, this is just documentable facts, combing through things like Chinese corporate records.
So I've got another question here from the YouTube comments, the YouTube chat, and we've gotten several of the, similar types of questions. And I don't know if you can personally answer this or not, but I'll bring it up for everybody to kind of pick at. How does something like this something this big fail to be reported to the people who deserve to hear it?
So I can tell you, and look, as I said, I've lived in Vietnam. Okay, I didn't even have American news. Okay, I had the BBC. Okay, I lived in China. Again, I did not have, cable news. Okay, the places I was always reading, being a China-focused person, was, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times. People that were covering China. When this report came forward, we tried to just, hand it off to respectable reporters. To be honest, I started out at the major publications and saying, look, this is documentable. You have people that cover China very deeply. I mean, they do very good work on China. And, this is documentable facts. I'm sure that your people have sources that they can call and say, tell me more. And to be honest, they all absolutely did not want to touch it. Period, full stop. I said, you can just use the material. You don't even have to cite the report. I don't even care. Just, make sure that what is happening here is getting out. And,
I saw something today. There was a report. Somebody said specifically, and I've forgotten the details, so forgive me, but the editors at many of the mainstream news outlets have specifically told their reporters, you are not to report on anything Joe Biden, anything negative about Joe Biden. It's a coordinated thing, and it's out in the open. They're not even hiding behind bias anymore. It's openly electioneering.
I can tell you from, I was involved in a story in some previous stories that were distinctly non-political. They had no real political thread in them anywhere. They were distinctly about China. And we were basically told, this confirms, a Trump narrative about China. We're not doing it. Okay. Again, it was not even a political story. It was just about, this is something that's happening in China. And we were told, this is going to confirm a Trump narrative. We're not doing it.
Good.
And that just tells you about the fake news. Trump calls it as it is, and it truly is fake news out there. Now, tonight on Tucker Carlson's show, I was listening to it earlier. He had a reporter on that had just quit his job, and he had been a founder of a company when he had left his previous job for censorship. Now, this company that had founded, on free speech, wanted to censor him in reporting on Biden, and he just resigned his position. And
Yeah,
so,
The Intercept is the name of the thing that Glenn Greenwald founded, and he was going to talk about the negative things about Biden, because even as a Democrat, he recognized that this guy's compromised. This guy can't be president.
I mean, the thing that I personally find so astounding, and I should say, like, look, I don't believe, I don't think doing something with Twitter is or Facebook is a good idea, because people reveal themselves through their own speech. Okay, it's very easy to tell. I'd much rather somebody stupid say something stupid, and so we can all see it, than hiding that. Okay, so I personally don't think it's a good idea to re-regulate speech on the internet or something like that. But I think what has come through absolutely clear, and this is, to me, look, this is the first time I've lived in the U.S. in more than a decade. The change in speech is absolutely stunning. I mean, Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi are not, diehard Republicans. Okay?
Not in any way.
right.
Okay.
So thank you so much for persevering to get this message out, because truly the people in America need to know what is going on. And there's a lot of stories being suppressed on this. A lot of stories suppressed on the Bidens, or on just a myriad of topics, quite frankly, by the media. It's not just on the Bidens, but they're very much, the family is compromised. And so when President Trump says this, it's true. And most things that I hear President Trump say comes to fruition. When I just go, I don't know about that, well, then I see that it does come to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, it's very disappointing to me, because I think, honestly, like, and again, I would always urge people, first of all, just, assume the laptop and, sex videos and all that kind of good stuff don't exist. You can clearly document these partnerships. You can clearly document who are they surrounded by. You can clearly document the hundreds of millions of dollars and billions of dollars that are in this fund. You can clearly document how absurd these deals are. We don't need it. The way I describe it is if somebody had asked me, I'm going to give you Hunter Biden's laptop, I would have told you, I'm probably expecting to find what Giuliani has uncovered. In a way, to me, there's not a lot of surprises there. I mean, to be blunt, there's not a lot of surprises. That's pretty much what I expected. But in a way, we don't need the laptop. We can look at Chinese corporate records and say, it's obvious.
Yes. And by this report, I would say so. This is a huge web of information. There's a lot of lanes to go down and do further analysis on and investigation on, to see just where it goes and follow the evidence of where the trail leads.
Absolutely. There's a lot of information there.
Red State is totally committed. Doesn't matter what is going to happen. And even after November 3rd, they will continue, pull the strings, and develop stories and keep reporting all this kind of stuff. Because what we're looking at is U.S. national security at risk.
Yes, on many levels, that we're not even aware of, quite frankly, on many levels. And so to see the companies that were purchased here in America that then benefited the Chinese Communist Party technologically, especially in a military sense, and yet it took our tax dollars, American tax dollars, to develop this company that they end up purchasing. That's not very smart dealings. And so then you have to look at who's in charge of overseeing these at the federal level that the Chinese can come in and purchase this and allow these deals to happen as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So we got another question here from YouTube real quick. Let's see, going back Jim asks, wouldn't the laptop have more of an impact on some people who have a shorter attention span?
Well, you know, one of the things I think is absolutely true, and I hate to think like this, but it's true. You know, nobody was going to pay attention to this story until there was a sex video.
Well, yeah.
and I can tell, I will tell you, I would actually talk to journalists. And I mean, there was one in particular, I spent an hour and a half, maybe almost 2 hours going over this report. You know, they're very interested. They're asking detailed questions, you know, very sharp reporter, major publication. And we get to the end. This is before everything, you know, with the laptop has been revealed. And they look at me and they say, so do you have a sex video, or is that going to get released? And I'm like, no, look at the report. Look at the corporate rec. They're like, so no sex tape. Am I understanding that correct? And I was just like,
well, now there is. So, you know, and maybe there's a connection to Malia Obama, if you believe all the internet rumors.
Well, okay, Christopher, you find crunching the numbers sexy. See, takes a different special.
So, I mean, but honestly, I mean, if you'd have told me what's on Hunter Biden's laptop, I probably, with some of the emails I've seen in the news, yeah, that probably makes sense based upon the records that I have. So it makes sense.
So there is going back just a little to the very beginning, because now that people have listened to a little bit more, there is some potential espionage here, right? With somebody purchasing some automotive, an automotive company that then turns into.
Well, let's put it this way. So, and again, I want to preface what I say here. This is more speculation with maybe a little bit of evidence. So, you know, we don't have a lot of strong evidence on this.
Okay.
First of all, Hunter Biden's not smart enough to be an intelligence asset, to be honest. Okay. He's just not. Okay. Nobody looks at Hunter Biden and go, wow, I'm going to get high grade intelligence info out of this guy. Okay. So that's the first point. How a lot of China operates is they make sure that palms are greased with money. Okay, so if you're a Chinese company and you want to get something, how do you do that? You give somebody a lot of money. Okay, and I'll just give you just to give you an idea the differences that we're talking about here. When I was in China, I was told by reporters that, you know, would make anywhere, say a normal China reporter would make anywhere from, say, 60 to 120,000 if they worked for a foreign organization. Okay. What I was told by all reporters was that they would get almost weekly emails from Huawei offering them, starting out at 300, and if you worked at a major publication and had some type of name, it could easily go up to 500 a year. Okay, so that would be a multiple probably of, you know, 3 to 5. Based upon, you know, a variety of factors. So what they will do is they will get somebody like that, and then this investment firm will say, look, we've got, you know, XYZ very famous person sitting on our board. You should trust us. Okay. And so the reality is that the Obama administration was very, very lax in a lot of their investment reviews, in a lot of their security protocols. You see this in all kinds of areas. And to be honest, they just didn't enforce the law really in a lot of areas. And so I don't think it was, and so the reason I tell you this is my read is not that Hunter Biden was a deep state intelligence asset working for the Chinese and they're going to go. What probably happened is they gave him a big check. They flew him first class. They said, let's do a big deal together. We need you to make us look good so we can buy this company. And let's put it this way. So in the best case scenario, he's just that much of an idiot. Number one, I think there's some evidence that indicates he's aware he was being used, and by the people that he was being used, to get a very high value technology for people that he knows or should have known were linked to the PLA?
Yeah, actually, based on what we know, how they operate, okay, and Chinese CCP really is a mafia family, okay? Think about Godfather movie, right? And time 200, let's say. And then each level, you have a handler, okay? So principal is not going to get his hands dirty. In this case, Xi Jinping, the dictator. And so under him will be Mr. Yang. And by the way, Yang was in Hawaii last June, met with Pompeo. That's the guy, okay? Yang is not going to get his hands dirty either. So he is going to ask his asset and Intel asset, which is Michael Lin, and to do those arrangements. So what Michael Lin doing is find those deals to pay off Biden's. So Biden's are hooked, Biden's owe them. So use Biden's name to target the kind of technology company in US and PLA, People's Liberation Army, want to purchase. That's how they do it. And pretty soon, that is the reason when Red State broke the story and Michael Lin is not available, got arrested in China because they don't want Michael Lin came back to US or to Hong Kong. And some American reporters, like Red State reporters, would ask questions, especially were embarrassed Joe Biden. Joe Biden happened to be China's candidate for president.
Right. Right. For sure. For sure.
And I should say, China understands that it's much easier to get what you want appealing to somebody's pocketbook. So I'm going to pay you 2 to 3 times, maybe 5 times what you would really get, and you're going to help me get what I want. And people go along with that. So in a way, I want to be careful here. I'm not saying Hunter Biden was an upstanding citizen, but I think it's a stretch to say that he was probably some type of compromised Chinese secret agent. He was probably just given a big check and some girls at a hotel, and he helped get the deal done.
A pile of crack.
Yeah.
So he was dirty and stupid.
Yes.
All right. We've got a couple of questions about the intelligence community. And I think this is a good place to wrap it up as our final question. We've hit the hour mark, and we should probably wrap it up. But a couple of good questions came in. One from our friend Kevin Hoare, who is also on the Oregon Republican Party Executive Committee. Why were our intelligence services so bad that the CIA and NSA didn't tell President Trump about the 12,000 troops and planned arrests before Solomon did? Maybe they did, but the deep state might have been trying to prevent it. And then another question from Dee on YouTube here. Do you think anything will happen with our intelligence agencies looking at this whole thing? I don't know what kind of insight you have into that, but if you could just sort of address that and let us know what you think.
So I cannot comment. I honestly have no idea what, the U.S. intelligence does or doesn't know, things like that. I would say, first of all, having spent 9 years in China, it's, you develop a skill of being able to essentially ferret out, and be able to tie links together to say, oh, this person, is a party member, this person is XYZ, and, you can put those things together. U.S. intelligence absolutely has those capabilities. And I would be, to be honest, I would be absolutely floored if, first of all, U.S. intelligence did not know that, Hunter Biden was meeting with individuals that were clearly, let's say, presented a lot of issues, to put it kindly. Okay. Second of all, it would come as an enormous surprise to me from what I've been told how the U.S. government operates. And again, I want to emphasize, I have no inside information. I've never worked for the government. I don't work for the government now. I don't work for a contractor, anything like that. What I've been told is that things like, Secret Service protection memos will get sent out of this person is going to the grocery store, and this is the time, and Bob and Jack accompanied Malia to the grocery store, whatever it is, okay, so that those reports get circulated. And so the Secret Service would have kept memos about Hunter met with XYZ person on XYZ date, et cetera, et cetera. They clearly would have been processing those materials, those memos, or notifications of who Hunter was meeting with. Clearly would have been circulated at higher levels of the government. Joe Biden definitely would have been, or his staff would have been notified. It simply defies logic that this was that nobody knew anything. I can't say who knew what, who knew when. It absolutely defies everything I've ever been told about the U.S. government for Secret Service protection, that how their memos are processed, that nobody knows anything.
I think wasn't it the FBI that came out today and said that they confirmed that they've been investigating money laundering for the last year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me comment on what Kevin was asking. I worked with Christopher Balding on Huawei investigation report as well. What happened was Christopher discovered a database link Huawei high-level management employees with dual titles, People's Liberation Army titles, as well as Huawei titles. Okay, so those guys on one hand working for Chinese military, at the same time working for Huawei. So he put that report together, and before he broke the story, and I sent the report to the White House and to National Security Council. Now, as the way I understand is that we have 17 intel agencies. They are not communicating very, very well with each other. And so President's Huawei policy, after that, and they went after Huawei with vengeance. And Pompeo traveled all over the world, say, we got to ban Huawei, right? No 5G, right? That was based on his report. And the national security risk was huge in this case.
Mm-hmm.
And but at the same time, what you realize is that my question go back to what the Consul General's office in Shanghai, in U.S. Embassy in Beijing, they are doing. That's the question, and I'm not surprised. The latest thing is 4 Chinese Hong Kong people, students, protesters, went into U.S. Consul General's office in Hong Kong seeking asylum, political asylum, got turned away, and Hong Kong police arrest them. And one of them got a dual citizenship and is got an American passport too, and want consular to protect him, and they turn him down. Mm-hmm. So the only thing I can think about right now is we got a huge swamp, okay, very, very deep swamp, even though Secretary Pompeo is doing great. I love this man. He take on China big time, right? But unfortunately, under him, the Consul General, the Visa Council, okay, those guys could be pro-China. That's what we're facing.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, this is a lot to digest. I mean, this is nuts how compromised everybody is, and you never realize, the average American never realizes how much communist China influence there has been throughout America. It's almost as if we've reached a tipping point. And I'm very concerned about this. I don't know about you guys, but the idea that we've been this compromised in America by the Chinese, and to almost as much of an extent the Russians, all that foreign influence and all that swamp, it's going to take more than just Donald Trump to drain the swamp. And I'm quite concerned that we can do it at all.
Yeah, and I mean, and look, I should tell you, like my kids, who are as white as I am, they grew up in China, and they speak native quality Chinese, and I'm a big believer in, America really needs to work with allies in the region, and I see that Secretary Pompeo has been in India and Vietnam, and really building up those countries, because look, they are just as concerned about China as we are. So I think those are great things. And it really is, I don't think people understand exactly what you just said of how deeply compromised. And the thing I would always tell people, forget the rhetoric. I try not to speak in rhetorical flourishes and things like this. I try to say, these are the facts that we can document. This is what we can document. I mean, if you want to argue with what, something that has been said tonight, read the report, find a factual or an analytical problem, and I will absolutely take it back to the author, and we can absolutely discuss, making an amendment if needed.
All right. On that note, let's go ahead and wrap up our special event tonight. Thank you so much, Christopher Balding. Really appreciate you shedding that insight on everything that's going on with the Biden family and BHR and the Bank of China and the nuclear engines for the submarines. Oh my goodness, there's so much to digest here. Thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Thank you, my privilege, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're gonna.
Sorry for the delays
Thank
early
you,
on.
Solomon.
Yeah, no, you can't help when the mainstream media comes out in a taxi like that.
Yeah, it was wild. That's why my phone was blowing up. So
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank
All
you
right.
for your time with us.
Thanks, appreciate it.